Ladies and gentlemen, we here. 5-0, the big 5-0. It is the 50th episode of OSP Old School Perspective. It is your boy Shaun Q, my partner, like always.
J Roman.
We have a special guest. It's the 50th episode. It's another one of those episodes where we can't do it without her. I'll be honest with you, we can't do any episode without her. But this one is special. We had to bring in the beautiful Veltria Roman, our producer, the lady who makes everything happen, the glue, who keeps us focused and on track. Because if not, this would be a 3-hour podcast of me and J Roman just talking shit to each other. It would be insane. So, welcome Veltria Roman in. Thank you for joining us again, Vel.
I'm sorry. I'm laughing so hard because that is true. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're gonna start off into a what's popping, and what is popping right now is a lot of people didn't think it would happen because of COVID, because of the nature of sports in 2020. But we are actually about to have a Super Bowl, and in said Super Bowl, I feel like, and I said this before, but this is the first time it's happened. There's gonna be a division in the Roman household. Veltria has been a Chiefs fan since before Priest Holmes was on the Chiefs. Take a second to let that sit in, folks.
I think she was a Chiefs fan around the time Montana was a Chief.
Go back there. I mean, like the cover of NFL 95, Joe Montana football. Yeah, Vel was a fan in that time. So she's been a Chiefs fan for a while. They've been winning lately. I mean, she's been on the kick. It's been dope. They got the great Muppet Pat Mahomes. And on the other side, the other half of the Roman household, there's a man who has been a diehard Patriots fan, and all of a sudden,
it's not all of a sudden. I like them, but now they have my favorite player.
Right, like so many other people who decided wherever Tom Brady goes, that's where I go. This man is a diehard Tom Brady fan, and now these two will face off in a battle of old versus young, new versus old, past versus present versus future versus whatever the fuck. It's Chiefs. It's Bucks. It's going to be insane. It's going to be crazy. Before we even start our episode, I need to know, is there going to be at least a little amount of shit talking in the Roman household?
We gotta make
It already started.
We gotta make a bet. There's usually like massage bets or steak dinner bets, something like that. So here's one thing that somebody said on First Take or something like that. He said, Tom Brady's the GOAT. What do you call baby goats? Kids. Mahomes is the kid. He's coming up, which I kind of like. I got to say, Mahomes is, after Brady leaves, I'm all Mahomes all day because I love that man. He's the most amazing thing I've seen on the field. Tom Brady is my favorite friend of Trump. He did distance himself the last few years, so I kind of let it be. But, man, I struggled for a couple of years there when I know he was at first wearing that MAGA hat and all that crap, and I was like, I don't know about this. But then he really didn't do much with that. I'm like, okay, maybe he like, no, I'm not going to do this. I don't know. I still don't know how I feel about it, but he's still my favorite player, and he's on a badass team that gave the Chiefs a good game earlier in the season. And Tom Brady's going to give a good game to Mahomes and do his thing. I will mention this, since we are in the 50th episode, this is Super Bowl 55. This is for Black History Month to kick it off. Mahomes, for those who don't know, is only the third black quarterback to win a Super Bowl, which was last year, of course. Mm-hmm. So he's still only the third black quarterback to have this chance again to actually probably only the third black quarterback. I'm sorry, the only black quarterback who might win back-to-back, because Russell Wilson did not do it. Russell Wilson was only the second in 2014. So that kind of shows you how crazy it is that it took this long for the NFL to shift and change. Granted, yes, Mahomes is half white or whatever other thing he is, because we all know he's, very light and has blonde hair for some weird reason. But the man could ball out. He could ball out, and I don't mind the Chiefs. I rooted for them when Montana was there, so they kind of always had a little something, even though they wear red. I don't pick my teams who wear red, but So, but they're my baby's team. They're my baby's team, so I'll go for them. I root for them. So I'm not going to be mad who wins or loses, but I will be mad when Tom Brady makes mistakes.
So I'm going to say that this is not the first rivalry Super Bowls that we've had, because
Super Bowl, yes, actually.
Super Bowl?
Yes, because Brady and Manning were always on the same conference.
So, but I will say that because Peyton Manning was my quarterback, although Kansas City was always my team, I love Peyton Manning.
Disgusting.
I hate that dude. Go on.
Yeah, we both did.
So, this is this is not new for our household at all. I will be mad if Tom Brady wins. Because I have feelings. And I can't ignore the fact that he's friends with Trump, even if he tried to separate himself from it. What I do like about him is that he seems to be apolitical because he didn't visit the White House when Obama was there or when Trump was there. So he gets like a half a point for that. And I'm wondering really how much cheating happens now that he's not playing for Belichick, if that was a Belichick thing or if that was a Tom Brady thing. Is your dude just a cheater or was his
It was never a Brady thing. Don't ever go there. It was never a Brady thing.
He took advantage of those deflated balls.
I'm sorry. The other team played with the same balls. There's nothing really to say about this.
We'll have this conversation off air.
I'm not going to talk to someone who likes a team who's won one championship in 50 years. So I'm not going to get into it. You want to start? You want to start? Super Bowl's coming. You want to start? We can go there. But that's not what this episode's about. You're frozen.
Oh yeah, you froze. Like once, hey, you can't start pointing your finger at the camera. Once you start pointing your finger at the camera, Zoom has a no black lady policy. You can't.
I'm not a Chiefs hater. So we're not going to go there with that. Plus, gosh, I love Mahomes, man. I love it.
I will be rooting for a good game as I like both storylines. One, I love Pat Mahomes. I think Pat Mahomes is the present and the future of football. The dude does things that nobody else can do. And him and Andy Reid are what I've been saying I want in Chicago for a long time, a good coach quarterback combo. However, I would be okay if Tom Brady wins another Super Bowl because then he can squash the argument of Tom Brady wouldn't be Tom Brady without Bill Belichick. Apparently, yes, the fuck he would. And have that argument squashed would be awesome.
He pretty much already squashed it, whether he wins or not. But he made it to the Super Bowl with another coach and weapons. Friggin' New England did him dirty the last couple years. They didn't get anybody. They got Sony Michel. They got some good D, but that's it.
Yeah. And now they're at home watching the game. So yeah, I would be happy either way. I would love to see a traditional, beautiful storytelling, torch passing game. Tom Brady throws 3, Pat Mahomes throws 4. They go out in the middle of the field after the Chiefs win. He gives them that hug like the league is yours, kid. You know what I mean? Like that. That to me would make a great story for NFL films. But if Tom Brady wins one, then it's like, hey, the gunslinger's not done yet. Pat Mahomes, your time might be now, but not till next year, motherfucker. You know what I mean? Like either way, it'd be a good storyline for me. And I like storylines. But let's get out of football. Obviously, y'all gotta have your rivalry. You guys to set your bets off camera. It is Black History Month, as we said. And how fitting that our 50th episode falls in Black History Month, because we are big on society and culture and what's happening to our culture and our society. And we had a conversation a little while ago that sparked the subject of today's episode. And I will let the lady who brings up most of our conversations, because once again, if not for her, it would be all, just movies and fucking cartoons and video games.
Yo, yeah, we got to do another one of that because I played some good stuff recently. Anyway.
So I'm going to let Vel present it to y'all the way she presented it to us to keep us on track. Talk to the people.
So with all of the social injustice and social unrest that happened in 2020, one of the things that really took off was the idea of what version of American history is being taught. What do people know about American history? Not just Black history, but America's history with its Black citizens, with and people of color in general. And what started happening all of a sudden was this change. Textbook publishers were making corrections in their textbooks. They were realizing that they were downplaying slavery. They were in some areas concentrating on the Confederacy more like it existed. The Confederacy is still being held up as this great thing in some areas, but it lasted, 5 years?
Not long enough to be in our American history.
I think 4 technically. I don't know.
But slavery and the effects of slavery, and then the effects of Reconstruction and the effects of Jim Crow, we're talking 400 years of American history and how much that was not included in the textbooks. I mean, Black history was concerned. It was like, hey, once they were slaves, but then Rosa Parks came and she sat on a bus and then MLK saved us all. Oh yeah, and they got Obama.
Right.
So a focus was really placed on alternate curriculums. And a big spark of this and was a look back at an article, actually a whole publishing of the New York Times Magazine, the 1619 Project, where they did a special release, and it focused on how slavery was not something that just happened in America for a time, but how it was ingrained in the beginnings of this country, because slaves came with the original settlers who became the founding fathers. And even in the Constitution, when it was originally being written, when they talked about freedom for all men and equality for all men and brought up slavery, they asked them to take that out. Like, don't talk about the slaves, because even back then they knew it was something to be ashamed of. And so we were having a conversation, non-episode related, and we started talking about the idea of like, when did we start learning about Black history? Because we're all of a certain age. I mean, this month is not just History Month, but it's Vel's birthday month, and I'm 40. And if we weren't taught things at, growing up, then what are the kids learning now? And what were the generations before us being taught? And how do we close that gap? So I'm gonna pitch the question to you guys, and I'll start with Shaun. What was your experience with American history and thus Black history in school?
So I grew up in Chicago in the 80s. So my school years were a lot like the movie Lean on Me with Morgan Freeman. Yes, there was gangs and violence and drugs and all kinds of good stuff. But one of the most important parts of that movie is the majority of the teachers were Black, because in the neighborhoods where I went to school, they were, I guess, considered not good neighborhoods to live in. And at that time, that meant it was not a good neighborhood to teach in. So just like Lean on Me, which RIP to the real Joe Clark, rest in peace, sir. Just like Lean on Me, if we did have a white teacher, she was teaching like classical music. And she had a lot of Black friends because she had no choice. Because if she was living in the ghetto, obviously she wasn't better than us. So yeah, it was a majority of Black teachers. And I look back at my routine and I realized the difference. And I thought it was just like an elementary school thing, but I saw like the culture shock from doing that and then moving to California, because we would say the Pledge of Allegiance every morning. And then we would have to sing the first verse of My Country 'Tis of Thee, which is an old song. And yeah, and that was like, we had to do both those while facing the flag, hand over the heart. Every morning we would have to do that.
I remember that.
And then at assemblies, we would sing the Black National Anthem. At assemblies, we would sing Lift Every Voice and Sing for assemblies. And I realized when I came out to California, we weren't doing that in California, where the public schools that I went to out here when I went to school. So I didn't have technically my first white teacher until I moved to California. And so it was kind of like when you're teaching history, it's for most people of color, it's almost inherent that when you are reading this textbook that has this much, you can't see my fingers if you're listening, it's a very small amount about the Black contribution to America, and this much about like the Confederacy and what white people did to get us here, and don't mention the Indians except for that one page. It wasn't happening in school when I was in school, because we had Black teachers, we had minority teachers who were like, fuck that. We're not going to talk. You know what? You guys are going to watch Glory today, and then we'll discuss Glory and then explain how that was important and why Black soldiers did so on and so forth. We learned about Buffalo Soldiers. We learned about Marcus Garvey. We learned about all kinds of stuff that I realized they weren't really teaching out here in history classes, especially American history classes. So I think it's a culture thing. I think it's a location thing. It has a lot to do with the neighborhood you live in and where you go to school, that they decide what to teach you. And it's not to say that it's impossible for a white teacher to teach Black American history, but if it's not being forced on them, they don't have to. They just teach what's in the textbooks. And for some reason, what we were being taught in Chicago in the 80s is different from what kids were being taught in other areas like Southern California in the 80s and 90s. So I learned about Black history very young because I was surrounded by historical Black people. Kanye
Could
West.
it be that you didn't have his textbooks? So you just had to write. I'm just messing.
that's actually good. Today textbook, we ain't got none. Y'all know who Denzel Washington is? All right, stay out for the next 2.5 hours. I'm gonna blow your mind. No, we had textbooks. Mother. Yeah, no, we had textbooks. It's just we weren't teaching from, I guess the teachers weren't teaching every part of the textbook, which I'm very glad they did.
Yeah.
Yeah, you always had to pick and choose certain parts of it, I guess, to get through it all.
And I kind of wish it was one of those things where I was like, I wish my kids grew up in Chicago for multiple reasons. One, because I want my son to shovel snow. It's a shitty feeling that every kid should have to go through. Two, different work ethic. I went recently and I saw it snows, people still go to work. When it rains out here, people are scared to go to work. Anyway, I that, and I know that the curriculum is different on the East Coast. I tell people all the time, if you get a chance to go even take 1 year of school on the East Coast compared to the West Coast, you should, because the pass fail is different. It's almost like they expect more. They don't believe in credits and partial credit for classes and shit. It's like, did you pass? Did you fail? If not, you take it again. Like it's real rough, and I love that. But yeah, Black history with me was taught at a very, very, very young age, and I now have to, I guess, display what I learned to my kids, because I don't feel like they're getting that full education in Southern California, which is, majority as far as teaching goes, white. What about you, J. Roman? Tell us about your childhood years when you and your friend Moses learned about Jesus at the same time. When you got all your
old joke? Is that an old joke?
You got all your information from a burning bush, you old bastard.
Well,
wait, Shaun.
Yes.
Moses was before Jesus.
Listen, I'm not playing this game with you. I'm talking to my friend. Can I talk to my friend without being judged, please? He knows.
Let's also remember that Jesus was of brown skin.
Yeah.
He was bronze color, at least.
I don't think anybody's forgotten that in this room.
Some people still try to not claim that, even though it says it in the Bible, but whatever. History, when it came to learning history, when we were talking about this the other day, it made me think, I don't remember having a Black teacher until maybe a couple of them in high school. I remember technically knowing a few, like we had Mr. Reed in junior high. We had a few others, but as far as having one, I don't remember one until high school. And even then in high school, I think I had maybe one that was mixed. I don't really remember at this point. But also when it came to history, I learned that I really loved US history, say like in junior high. And it was taught by a white guy, which is fine. And he really like nailed home the intricacies of how America came about and stuff like that. So, but we didn't get too far. I don't remember us really talking about slavery a lot, really getting in depth about a lot of the Black history. We talked about civil rights and all that stuff, of course. But again, like Veltria said, it goes from like slavery, Rosa Parks, Obama. But Obama wasn't there at the time, so it was just slavery, civil rights, and then nothing else. We learned about nothing else. It wasn't until high school, and in fact, it was a teacher with a German last name who really hammered home the seriousness of how bad slavery was and how awful it was, the experience of the slave ships and the amount of deaths and disgustingness that they had to go through, and just the undignified way these people were forced to become slaves and live and travel and all that. And it was no wonder why so many went down and, or decided to jump the ship or, died on the way. It was awful. Just the most awful thing I'd ever. He even gave out like little side notes that weren't in the textbook. Like that's how you know this guy was serious about us learning this shit. They weren't even in the textbook. He printed them off the internet. Like read this. And I remember being so disgusted by one. It was about the slave ships and the conditions underneath, with them having to shit and pee right where they sleep and all that. And I was like, I couldn't read it. I couldn't read it at first. I was like, okay, I have to read slowly, like paragraph by paragraph, and take a break because I was breaking down mentally. And I was like, Well, it was physically, it was fucking awful. And then it wasn't till college even, and this again wasn't a black teacher. I in college even I had maybe two, maybe. Um, and it wasn't until college. So I actually heard a teacher condemn Christopher Columbus for his role in bringing slavery to this country and his role in the genocide of the natives of this country and these lands, north and south. Granted, he himself was the one that I guess you could say helped facilitate it. It's not like he was running across the land conquering the whole thing, because you have Amerigo Vespucci and all that also were here and all bunch of other stuff. But it wasn't I still have never got that black history that I've always, I guess you could say, craved, or history in general, that I've like hard hitting history, except for those couple of classes. So it's always been up to me to really learn this stuff on my own. I bought my books, I read stuff, I go online, do research in libraries, whatever I got to do to get that. And in fact, I've learned more from these little books that recently, actually, that my daughter has on Black history and Puerto Rican stuff than I think I have my whole life being taught in a classroom. You know what I mean? And it's kind of nuts. Like, I don't know jack shit really about being Puerto Rican except for how to order my food. Barely can dance it. I don't listen to music because it makes me feel like cleaning, and that's not one of my favorite things to do. So salsa comes on, I'm like, where's the broom? Where's the broom? You know what I mean? But it's one of the things, like, I don't know much of the history. I've always had to just learn it. It wasn't passed down to me, and I've always missed that. I've always felt like I've wanted that. I've actually, and I meant to do this before he died, and I wanted to interview my grandfather on tape before he died. I don't know Spanish enough to talk to him, but I'd have someone with me, one of my cousins, just speak to him, let him speak. So I want to do it with my grandmother if I can before she passes. She's now been living like 15 years past my grandfather's death, which is amazing. She just turned 88. She's black. Everyone knows it. It's actually interesting when I think of a lot of my family were Puerto Rican. Some of them light, some of them dark, some of them in between. But they all acknowledge grandmother is black Puerto Rican. She's Afro-Caribbean. We know this. And it's interesting when I hear my dad talk about it, and because he's been experiencing some stuff recently and seeing what's going on and listening to the news a little bit. And he's like, man, this is crazy. My mother's black and she has to go through this shit. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, Pop, you know it. But then I have so much of the family that is so quick to say I'm not black, I'm Puerto Rican, or I'm Spanish. And so many Puerto Ricans in general, so many Spanish people in general. You know what I mean? And it's like, we can't forget that we have the African side that was brought to our place. All of our blood is mixed. And if you find a pure Taino, a pure native, let me know. Introduce me, because I want to see it. I want to meet that person. I want to see what they look like. You know what I mean? Because we don't look like that anymore. We're not like that anymore. So it's the black history I've learned, was really just from, I guess you could say, movies growing up. And unfortunately, they weren't always the greatest depictions. I'm talking like, we got moved to LA when I was young. So the big deal at that time was stuff like Colors, later on New Jack City. So it's like, these are the depictions of black people I saw. And of course, interestingly enough, The Color Purple, 1985, I remember watching it at that age, and it became one of my favorite movies. And every time I tell people that, they're like, what? At your age? I'm like, yeah, it was so fascinating to me, because it was this country family of black people doing what they do. And yeah, there's violence and stuff like that, and not great things that happened to Whoopi Goldberg and all that, but it was still like a glimpse of maybe a different side or different history that I had no clue about. You know what I mean? And it also told me, like, hey, a lot of this shit is the same thing, because I was getting my ass whooped too. You know what I mean? So I'm like, similar experiences. And it's one thing that people forget, especially in this country, is that we have so many more similarities than we do differences. And the differences we really need to actually embrace, because that's how we learn, that's how we engage, and that's how we expand our own horizons. Imagine saying, I'm not going to eat that because that's considered black food, or this food or that food. You're missing out on so much, and you're missing out on the possible conversation you could have if you go to a black person's table or a Spanish person's table or somebody's table and sit with them, eat that food. You know what I mean? It's the same thing. Like, people who just are just so one-sided, they don't want any part of the other culture. It doesn't make any sense to me. It just really doesn't. You know what I mean? And maybe I'm a rare breed of that I don't think I am. I feel like I'm part of the majority in that way, but it's so crazy. And I recently asked Veltria, I need something from the black people who are able to explain their experiences in a very well articulate way. It doesn't have to be super, crazy big words and stuff like that, but I need to explain, because there's people out there, and I have friends out there who speak on stuff about BLM And then they try to twist it to the all lives matter thing. And I was like, if you're saying that, you're not getting it. And you probably haven't asked your Black friend, how are you feeling? Or how are you doing? You're probably not talking to them enough about it to speak like that, talking about all lives matter bullshit and this and that. Like, we get that. But we're trying to make a point here. But I don't know. I don't understand, like, even going there and being so close to it. You know what I mean? It just doesn't make sense to me. I don't understand how humans can be like that.
I like that you talk to people who have a Black friend.
That's the thing. I don't even know if they have a Black friend. I don't know if they have a Black friend, but they're saying this shit. I'm like, I don't understand you, man. Like, I don't understand where you're coming from.
Right.
You know, I really don't. So.
No, what about you in school? Your upbringing as far as school goes was different from J.
Yeah, because you're born and raised LA. I mean, partially.
Well, I went to school in Inglewood growing up. So
always up to no good. Sorry.
Don't make me start moving my feet under here. So it was different. I went to 2 schools. We can get into the reasons why. Until 6th grade, I went back and forth between 2 schools, a public school and a private school. The private school was a Christian-based school, but I don't remember any non-Black people even working there because they were all from the church that I went to, which was a Black church. And so there at that school, in the mornings, we said the pledge, and we said the pledge to the American flag, and then we said the pledge to the Christian flag, and then
what's the Christian flag?
Yeah, what is that? The Christian flag?
I honestly don't even remember what it looks like. I can remember part of the pledge. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to blaspheme if I get it wrong.
Right.
But there was a Christian flag, and then we sang the Black National Anthem all the time. Lift every voice and sing was everything. Assemblies, graduations, Black History Month church services. At the public school too, we always participated in the Inglewood MLK Day March, where we marched from one part of Inglewood to the other part and met at the church, and then there was a big ceremony. In fact, I met Shirley Chisholm at one of those. She was the guest of honor. I believe I got to introduce her. Otherwise, I walked her in. My memory from those days is a little bit foggy at times. But at the public school, there were some white teachers. Mr. Udowitz is Jewish. He's still a part of my extended family. My mom is still close with him. He's just like this down-ass white Jewish dude who felt it was just as important to teach us history as the Black teachers. And on top of that, my mom is an educator. My mom is a teacher. So teaching what you learn in school plus has always been a part of my life. If they didn't teach it in school, there was a book about it in my house. Like you were talking about the Buffalo Soldiers. I read about Buffalo Soldiers. I read stories about Black men during the gold rush and how much we didn't hear about that here. And those are things I kept with me. So I always read, I'm always learning. It's always been a part of me, so much so that it almost didn't matter what I learned in school because I was exposed to it in other ways. Also, in the summers, we went to YMCA camp, and there at the YMCA in South Central Los Angeles, all of the counselors who came in for the summer were HBCU students and graduates. So I'm surrounded by educated Black people who just made me want to be an educated Black person and learn more about Black history. So much so that it eventually got me in trouble as I got older. So I'd be in, say, a history class, and they'd introduce something, and I'd be like, yeah, but. I actually remember getting kicked out of a class in college. And you guys know I went to a small private Christian university. There were so many issues already with that. Shaun's looking back, fond memories.
Yeah, nothing to do with history. Okay, carry on.
And I was in a class, and the instructor said that the slave who invented this cotton gin was stupid. And I stood up and I was like, excuse me. And then he tried to move on. And I was like, excuse me. No. How on earth are you saying that someone who had no formal education, who came up with an invention that revolutionized the cotton industry in America, was stupid? Well, it was a dumb decision for him to do because it increased the workforce. Therefore, ignorant. He didn't know that the outcome was going to affect his life in a way. He was thinking of how it could possibly help. But you don't call him dumb or stupid. It was a decision that he didn't understand the outcome for. And I stood there, and he was like, are you done? And I said, no, because you owe me and this class an apology. And then he kicked me out.
Of course.
How dare he should apologize to you?
Which was fine. I went to the dean and I was like, he owes me an apology. But it was because of my upbringing. It was because of the teachers who instilled in me a sense of self. And there was this sense of pride that I had in my Blackness from learning history early and learning that, like my shirt says, my Black is beautiful, from a very young age. That made it easier for me when I moved to Orange County, when everybody didn't agree with that. Like, you could make fun of me or bully me for a whole bunch of things, but because I was Black was never going to be one of them.
Right.
And now I'm trying to do that for my daughter. Like Juan said, we have so many books. She's getting read something every day, from history to how beautiful her brown knees are. Or the newest book that we were reading the other day is called Don't Touch My Hair. It's amazing because it's just this story about how, yes, my hair is fun and it's curly and it's soft and people are attracted to it, but no, you don't get to touch it without asking me.
Right.
But
don't even do this. Don't even do this. Like,
but unfortunately, I'm teaching her things that she's not going to learn in school. And so her counterparts may not know. And I think that is where we encounter problems, especially as we get older.
You met Shirley Chisholm in school. I met Martin Luther King. I was coming around the corner, he punched him in the stomach. I'm joking. I think what you guys are doing with Diva, with your daughter, it not only should be done in every household, and not just Black household, not just Latin household, not just Asian households, but in households in general. You should be teaching kids about your culture, about your history, and how it relates to what they're going to in America, and American history. No learning should just stop at school. I don't think any student should be going to school like, I learned this, you get home, you learn nothing. I don't think that should happen. It should be an extension of what you learned, and that's in households with good parenting. That's how it's supposed to go. I want to get more into this because you mentioned the 1619 project, and then there was something else that we were going to talk about later. Now that Mr. Trump is no longer in office, he did try to pull a fast one. We will get into that, but we got to take a commercial real quick. We're going to take a commercial. We'll come back. Keep your eyes open. Keep your ears open.
Welcome back. So I had to move. Internet issues. Thank you, COVID. Maybe somebody is doing school near here. I don't know. Anyway, right before the break, Shaun was brought up the 1619 project that I mentioned early on in the podcast. And what was really cool for me, I sent it to you guys to read. is that the whole magazine was about the places in our system that are messed up that can be directly traced back to slavery. And whether you agree with it 100% or not, it definitely has legs to stand on, you know? And what is so interesting to me, as I'm sure you guys feel the same, although you may not use the word interesting, because that's my nice way of saying it sometimes, is how much offense white people seem to take to the idea that slavery has affected anything now. Because, you know, they didn't own slaves. Don't blame them. Don't make them pay reparations.
Right.
It's not on them. It's history. It's a long, long time ago. It doesn't affect us anymore. So we don't need to learn about it. We don't need to talk about it. But what's hilarious to me is that our former president decided to take this a step further and introduce the 1776 Commission.
Real quick, before we touch on that, which is hilarious, by the way. Before we touch on that, if you haven't read it, like Vel was saying, the 1619 Project is a very good read. And I
Amazing.
feel like as I'm reading it, I am reminded of the people who I speak to today in 2021 who say things like, well, are you a slave? Were your parents slaves? All right, then why are we even talking about it? No, nobody you know was an actual slave, so you shouldn't get reparations. America has moved past that, and so should you. No, motherfucker, they have not. No, we have not moved past slavery. And if you were to read something like the 1619 Project, you would see, or watch any fucking episode of Blackish, you would see how slavery still affects us today. I feel like the ignorance is so fucking thick. It's so thick in American society. Even after reading this project, I realized even when the Constitution was written, the whole goal was to be like, we will hide the fact that we are still deep into slavery. What they mentioned in that, they mentioned that one of the reasons why they wanted to succeed from Europe was because Europe was about to abolish slavery. And they were like, no, you're not going to take my slaves from me. Fuck this. We'll just leave and fight for our rights. One of those rights they were fighting for was the right to own slaves. And Dave Chappelle said it best when he was like, can you imagine Thomas Jefferson sitting there? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. Where's my sandwich, nigger? And he put it so perfectly, because this was happening in our society. It is ingrained in everything we do today. And like I said, with the show Blackish, I love that they hit him up every once in a while. They hit up Dre and be like, let me guess, this has to do with slavery. He goes, it always comes back to slavery. In a way, it kind of does. So I want to, man, I'm going to blast this article for everybody to read. I want everybody to read this. It's a beautiful project. But then you mentioned the honorable, the greatest, the ballsiest president in American history, Mr.
Hold on, I got a little something to talk to just to touch on. Do you know who in our country has gotten reparations?
Who?
The Japanese people.
Really?
For their internment camps in World War II. Because of World War II, their internment camps. They've gotten reparations.
Can we count casino owners and casino land as American Indians getting reparations?
To a certain extent,
yes.
It is. If you
that
read,
was like, oh, here's a little something for you. That's what that is.
That counts.
It's like, we did this to you, so we're going to give you sovereign land and the ability to make money on it that we can't touch in the same way. Absolutely.
Technically, yeah, that's reparations.
I mean, and if you learn history, if you really go into history and you find out that, first of all, after when Lincoln was considering freeing the slaves, because he didn't believe in slavery, he wanted to abolish slaves. He also did not believe that Black people and white people should live together and be equal. He wanted to send all the Black people somewhere else to live. But then, they basically were like, he brought in some trusted advisors who were Black, and they were like, no, this is our home too. We want to stay here. So then the idea was, after the Civil War, the land that they acquired from the Confederacy, that I forget the right word, that they basically took from from, the plantation owners and whatnot. They acquired that land. It became federal land. This is where the idea of 40 acres and a mule was supposed to come from. It was, we will give you land so that you can start on your own.
Mm-hmm.
And then that went out the window.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Lincoln's successor was one of the most racist presidents that we had. Probably not as racist as Woodrow Wilson, but he was racist. He was like, no, and I'm going to forgive the Confederacy, and here's all your land back. Black people, you figure it out. Mm-hmm. So a lot of Black people were suddenly free, didn't own anything, had nowhere to live. And the only work that they knew how to do was working the land. So now suddenly you have slaves working the land of the people that used to own them mm-hmm. for very minimal money. On top of that, while that's happening, there's massive voter suppression happening. There's massive voter intimidation happening. And they're not letting Black people go to the polls to make changes that will help them get along either. And then we usher in Jim Crow. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when you take all of that into consideration, absolutely everything traces back to slavery. Mm-hmm. But, Donald Trump decided that slavery wasn't that bad. And he needed some historians and some educated people to prove him right. So he commissioned the 1776 report, Trump's 1776 commission.
If you haven't read it, not as good a read as the 1619 Project. It sounds like, it sucks because I could only read it hearing his voice reading it to me.
Oh.
And it's just, I know.
I didn't think about that, but thanks a lot.
As I'm reading it, I'm hearing him read it, and I'm like, oh. And it's basically him saying, listen, slavery wasn't that bad. Everybody was doing it. It wasn't just us. That's what he sounds like.
That's pretty good. I'll take that.
That's what he sounds like. All the other kids were doing it. We just did it kind of better, because we're American. We do everything better, really good. That's pretty much what he was saying. It's just, as you read it, it's just, it singes the nostrils. It's rough.
One of the best things Biden has done is in his first day, I think, he canceled that shit. He was like, nope, he got rid of it.
Nicole Hannah-Jones, who is the initial brains behind the 1619 Project, a historian and a writer for the New York Times, and one of my heroes now, because every time I listen to her, I just recently re-listened to her on Jamel Hill's Unbothered podcast, and she was saying, okay, fine, other countries had slavery, but no one had slavery like America did. They didn't have chattel slavery where human beings were treated as property, as animals. And I was listening to
I don't know if I agree with that though. Ancient times they had slavery and they treated those people like dirt.
They may have treated them like dirt, but if you're talking about
maybe like modern history,
biblical times, but we're talking about modern history. We're comparing it. They're comparing. A lot of times in these comparisons, they're talking specifically about you're supposed to look at it like basically first world country to first world country.
Right.
Okay.
And
when he says everybody else is doing it, you're comparing it to what everybody else was doing at that time.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm just thinking like that's such a general statement of not as like treating them as they were, but ancient Romans, ancient Egyptians, they treated their slaves, chained up, trash,
Yes, but those were also, if you think about that, I'm not saying it was right, but if you think about it, you're talking about conquerors going in and conquering a land and taking over those people.
Yeah, okay.
Which is not the same thing as what was happening in American slavery.
No, definitely not. We're talking about ancient versus modern times. I get that.
Right.
So
And
I get
even, yeah, what you're saying is people would go over and enslave everybody as opposed to bringing slaves home.
Yeah, that's a little different.
Slaves to work.
And doing it based off of race.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost, almost, you know, completely. And then writing into the laws the ways that you could not get out of slavery. If you were born into slavery, you had to stay a slave. You had to be born free to be free. You had to, your slavery status was not based on your father, it was based on your mother. Do you know why? Because that gave slave owners who were having their way with slave women who were bearing their children an out to not have to free the children that they made. So anyway, listening to her talk is just, it's like soothing for me. I love educated people. But listening to some of the objections that she gets, the literal death threats, because, you know, history is, forget slavery, forget Black history. Let's talk about Alexander Hamilton for just a second. Lin-Manuel Miranda got obsessed with this dude after reading a book and decided to make this crazy musical that Americans love. There are plenty of historians who are like, but Alexander Hamilton was no hero. And here's all the reasons why. Because you can take pieces, but you can take pieces of a story and see them in different ways.
Yeah, of course.
You know, but all together is how you get the whole picture. So to just kind of discount it and be like, yeah, but our slavery wasn't that bad.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
What was this name of the section of that of the 1776 commission?
I don't remember at this point. I had this look in my face the whole time. I was like, this can't be real. Like what I'm reading right now, this can't be what they actually put together for us to read, this pro-America curriculum, you know, as if it's not already pro-America enough. But I don't remember. I don't remember the sections.
They were
I just read
challenges
it with such disdain.
The challenges to America's principles.
Oh yeah. And all the principles that are put in, I'm like, these are not principles of Trump. So what's he even commissioned this for? To get a lesson for himself? I don't know what's going on here. He doesn't have these values.
He commissioned it because he tried to make it illegal to teach the 1619 project in school, and he wanted to create an alternative.
Yeah, of course he did, because he wanted his white people to, you know, his Proud Boys and all of them who love him so much, to have something that they could be proud of and happy with and whatever. You're a bunch of treasonous. Anyway.
But when I think about this, I think about when people refuse to even talk about Black history or acknowledge the significant role that slavery played on the shaping of this country, and how they want to just push it away.
Yeah.
In my opinion, this is a lot like people who dealt with trauma but won't get any help. And then they're like, well, I don't need to worry about that anymore because now I work out and now I do this and now I do that. And that's taken the place of that trauma. So now you guys are free. You get to work. You had Obama. Isn't that trauma gone? But we haven't dealt with the trauma.
We haven't changed the laws. We haven't changed the institutions. You can't change shit when across the land it's still the same crap. Nothing's changed.
America refuses to address and heal its PTSD. And until we do, we will not move forward.
Yep. I remember when I saw that or heard something like that.
It's that old saying of those who do not learn history are doomed to repeat it. You know, we didn't see people literally getting killed at the polls, but the laws in some of those southern states that they changed to make it harder to vote is the same thing they were doing during Reconstruction and Jim Crow and the Civil Rights Movement.
Oh, yeah.
So we are entering somewhat of a new era. It's so hard as an American or as anybody who is watching what's happening in America right now to say, oh, we got a new president, new era. We went from an old white man to an older white man who just has different beliefs. So it's not that much different. But we do have our first VP of color, and as much as she is the focal point of this current White House regime, there's a very important piece in the Biden Harris uh, presidency that a lot of people in America are paying attention to, and that is Joe Biden's wife, because
Mm-hmm.
Mrs. Biden is an educator.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest, and this is just from hearing out on the street and hearing in bars, what teachers are going through right now has never happened in American history. Having
Yeah.
to do
Yeah.
with distance learning is something that people were not prepared for. It's not common, and it's not something that just like the pandemic is not something that anybody has dealt with before, so they don't really know how to deal with it. So a lot of educators are hoping and putting their eggs in the basket of Mrs. Biden. Like, well, she knows what we're going through. What can she change? Hopefully she can make it better. Help us, Mrs. Biden. Help us, please, First Lady. We don't know what we're doing out here. And it's a lot of pressure to put on one person. But like I saw the first thing, they were like, President Biden's wife, the First Lady, took cookies to the men in uniform the other day. Bitch, we don't need cookies. We need help. So I don't know how much she can actually do or control or handle. But this is, I want to say, the first time, unlike our last First Lady, who almost absolutely didn't do shit. She didn't do shit, right? Did she do anything?
I mean,
She had that anti-bullying campaign.
oh,
that's because she was getting bullied at home. That makes sense. I don't.
She decorated the White House for Christmas and changed the rose garden.
There's that. Yeah.
After she said "fuck Christmas."
So now there's a lot of pressure being put on this First Lady, and that's one of the main stories I'm going to watch from this.
Well,
what's happening? What teachers expect a lot from this lady.
I don't know if there's actually that much pressure, except for what she might put on herself, because historically, yes, First Ladies get into some business and they do their thing. But I'm not sure how many people actually expect much from First Ladies. Now, Michelle Obama was a badass, and so was a lot of other First Ladies. She implemented, healthier food programs in schools. She went for Get Fit, Fit 60, whatever for the kids.
Right.
She did all this stuff. And then Trump tried to reverse it. No, let them have pizza and fries and all that, whatever they want all the time. It was kind of nuts. On her birthday, of course, he pulled that nonsense. But anyway, I'm going to really actually try and
vegetables.
They are. I'm going to really try and focus, not even saying anything about this asshole anymore, because he's out, but he's still around, that bastard. But I'm trying not to. Anyway, so we have some badass First Ladies out there who have done amazing things. But I'm not sure if anyone actually expects them to do anything. I didn't expect Melania Trump to do anything, because right. I don't expect. And if they do something great, wonderful. Something else to learn about, to write about, to read about, to teach my child about. Hey, this lady did this. She was maybe from this or that. She wants to do this. Now with a women VP, though, I'm interested more in that side to see what rights she pushes for that maybe the Senate has been trying to take away from women all these damn years, that she's going to be the deciding vote on, or be able to, have a little more sway in that, because she's a senator all the way up until now. So, and one of the very few black senators and one of the very few female senators. So that's where I'm more interested in. But the fact that she is an educator, I love that, because Trump put people in that weren't educators, that were just basically about making money, like DeVos, who was trying to make more of those, what are the charter schools and shit that are money-making schools. Yeah, some of them can be nonprofit, some of them can be not for, not trying to make a whole lot of money, really educate. And I hear the education of a lot of those places is actually really good, but she undermined a lot of stuff. She was pushing for stuff like school loan programs to be full effect, go after these people. She made the laws easier for like Sally Mae and all these people to come after you for their money, and Navient, all that stuff. So with this person as a teacher who has students, who's still had students until recently, or dealt with that in that side, I'm really interested to see what kind of push she can make, because she has Joe Biden and she has hopefully a Senate on her side, because we all know, and it's been like this forever. I saw my first teacher strike when I was in the 3rd grade. What's that make me, like 7 years old, 8 years old? Teacher strikes, and they happen all the time because they never get enough. They never are making enough money. The fact that any of them pay out of pocket to go buy rulers for a class or some nonsense like that, that's nonsense, man. We're paying them pennies, and we're paying these yahoos on TikTok whatever amount of money they're making. You know what I mean? It's nuts. It's always going to be like that. I don't know what she's going to be able to get done.
But that's what I'm saying. In the same way you feel like there's pressure put on Kamala Harris because she's a woman of color in the White House, I feel like there are a lot of educators who are putting that exact amount of pressure because they have an educator in some kind of position of power in the White House.
Yeah.
So I need to say this really quick.
No.
First, the first lady is actually expected to do things. There is a budget set aside for it. They get a staff. So they're expected to, it used to be about entertaining and being the host for, the big, for the people coming from other countries and the diplomats and things like that. Now they have somebody who does that. And I think since Nancy Reagan, it became you take up a cause.
Yes.
Yeah.
And you push that cause. So Nancy Reagan was all about the drugs.
Dare to say no to drugs.
And she was the dare lady.
I remember that. That's right.
That was a big deal.
I think that whatever Dr. Jill Biden decides to take up will be important. I think what's more important, what teachers should be paying attention to, and everybody should be paying attention to, is the fact that President Biden has nominated people into positions who are actually qualified.
Yes.
They are actually qualified. They are actually diverse and some overqualified to lead these sectors of our country into a new path. I believe the Secretary of Education, is that what Betsy DeVos's character?
That's what she was. That's what she was.
Title was.
Character in this story of the White House.
Is that the part she played in this crazy soap
the devil
opera?
clown. The devil clown of education.
Real quick on that, I think if anything Donald Trump has done is he's made the White House a reality show, and that's how we look at it now.
That's exactly what he did.
It's now a reality show. What character did she play? Sorry, go on.
Yeah, so I think what's going to be important is the fact that we actually have current educators who are not private school focused and money focused in the right positions, and he's done that across the board, and that's exciting. Secondly, if you're paying attention, I believe that Dr. Biden says that she plans to still work during this.
Yeah.
So her being the savior of teachers, yes, she can, give her input and I don't know, withhold if she has to get things through.
Withhold
you
what?
Know exactly what the fuck she's talking about. Don't even try. If anything,
we're talking about government, so I was thinking government funding type stuff. I'm like, she doesn't have that power, but
Dr. Jill Biden is the most powerful person in the country right now.
I got you. I got you. I didn't
want to say it. I'm glad Vel said it. No, she has power, my nigga. She got the
No. I get that.
But I think that her husband, what we see and the way he talks about her and everything, he also really respects her and respects what she has to say. So yes, she does have some power in that. But
they also sleep in the same room. Did you hear about that scandal? They sleep in the same room, in the same bed in the White House.
Fuck.
So yeah, I think that's where people should be really putting their energies into, is making sure. And I believe that the person that was nominated for Secretary of Education is from Southern California, from San Diego.
There's so many people I can't keep up right now.
I know.
There's so many new people.
But I think that's where people really need to pay attention, because I think she wants to continue to do good in the ways that she's already been doing good. And I think that is as much important for her life as it is for this country, for her to continue to do the work she was already doing.
Agreed. I agree fully. We have a first lady who's actually working and can say, well, here's what I'm seeing in my day-to-day job. Here's what I feel like we should change. As opposed to the one that's like, well, I wore this potato sack today and he said it was fashion. So there's that. So let's get into our what the shit, because we have a what the shit, and it didn't stop at 2020. We are still losing legends, and we recently just lost two. I'm gonna touch on one real quick, and then I'm gonna let Jay and Vel touch on the other one. We lost Larry King. Now, losing Mr. King is a big deal because in a past episode, I remember discussing with Vel that we didn't have a majority outlet. We didn't have a major outlet like we did back in the day when there was a scandal or there was somebody who was known as a social pariah in society. There were certain outlets they could go to speak their case, and then we as the American people could decide if we believed them or if we thought they were full of shit. People could go to Oprah, and if she does it now, she's picking and she's barely doing it. People could go to Barbara Walters, who's old and senile now. They would also go on Larry King. They would go on Larry King Live. These people would talk to Larry King, and this guy for years, decades has been that guy that you can go to like, well, this is what R. Kelly said on Larry King Live. Here's what Michael Jackson said on Larry King. When Larry King sat down and spoke with this man and did this research and asked the questions that America wanted to know, that was like a majority outlet, and we just lost him. I truly feel if not for Larry King, we wouldn't be able to do a podcast. We wouldn't be able to do what we're doing right now because he interviewed a range of people. From former presidents to rappers to comedians to writers, authors, you name it. He would sit down and talk with them, and it wasn't like a late night show where he had to throw in some jokes. It wasn't like a show where he had to keep people entertained. It was just him, that person, real questions. And with him now passing, I feel like the way I said before, I know Veltria mentioned Jada Pinkett Smith doing the Red Table Talks on Facebook. Facebook is one outlet. We have so many outlets now, it's hard to find that main. We will never again have that main as long as there's ways for anybody in the world to stream something. Yeah. And so we lost a full-on legend, and he was doing it up till the day he died. He was interviewing people on Zoom. He was doing Skype meetings. Yeah. And I feel like we just lost a main voice in that main media outlet. And RIP Mr. King. And
what I remember about Larry King was his interviews felt more candid. They didn't feel very bottled up. He really asked tougher questions, I felt like, that were more personal. Like in Barbara Walters, it was always seemingly very formal. They were away from each other on the couch, but it's very easy. Barbara Walters hit with hard questions, but she let them get away with weak answers sometimes. Yeah. I felt like Larry King, like he dig in a little bit because he was on a cable news channel and he was like, no, we're going to go into this. But, maybe because he was a guy, they were okay with that. I don't know. There's always that kind of thing. People will respond to women and men differently. Right. But yeah, Larry King, legend for sure.
As you guys know, I love true crime media.
A little too much. Some would say a little too much.
I mean, maybe, but also, who do you turn to when you're thinking about doing bad things?
I text you first. I text you first and foremost.
And I let you know whether or not you'll get away with it. And most of the time, the answer is no. And you stop. So I'm helpful.
Sorry.
So my legal advice the other day wasn't good enough.
I'm like, now let me ask somebody who knows killers. I'm like, Jay, if I were to do something like this, he's like, yeah, man, fuck it, son, let's get it. One moment, Vel, don't do it. Why not? DNA. Damn. Go on.
It's funny because I knew of Larry King and I watched some of his celebrity type interviews before, but he's become a major staple in my life because he's in all of these documentaries. He has interviewed all of these killers, all of these suspected killers, all of these
he's a hardcore.
Like he sits down with the Jodi Ariases and the Scott Petersons, and it's like, oh my gosh, Larry King is always there. He is always there. It actually, on one of my podcasts that I listen to, it's like, and we got another visit from Larry King this episode. And I appreciate more than that crazy lady with the accent that's on Court TV.
Totally don't.
You guys would know who I'm talking about anyway. Nancy Grace.
Sure.
Anyway, when she interviews people, it's always like with this twist of like how much she thinks they're guilty and like she's trying to make them, confess or whatever. Larry King always gave people the benefit of the doubt to tell their stories while asking the hard questions that the rest of us wanted to hear. So I appreciate him, and rest in peace.
Rest in peace. And then we lost. It is Black History Month, and so we're going to go out on a note of us losing a Black historian. We lost a Black legend who I want to say transcended the sport. Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron transcended the sport of baseball. Hank Aaron is one of those names that if you were talking about great baseball players of all time, you're talking about great athletes of all time. You were talking about great Black athletes of all time.
Great people.
Great people. Hank Aaron's name should always fucking come up. If you are talking about Jackie Robinson and you don't mention Hank Aaron at all, then you are a racist.
Well, okay.
No pressure. But Hank Aaron, Hank Aaron was, I posted on our page a little while ago an article that they showed of Hank Aaron when he hit the home run that beat Babe Ruth's record. And how when he hit that home run after that game and he celebrated, he was escorted. The team paid for him to have a police escort for 2 years because this man was getting death threats because you're breaking whose record? You're going to take Babe Ruth out of the record book? No. You're going to let this coon take over Babe Ruth's record? Not on my watch. And this dude had to be escorted around everywhere. And he was saying some real shit up until the day he passed. Hank Aaron is a legend on so many levels that it hits not in the same way that like a John Lewis would hit, but it's one of those, because when we mentioned John Lewis, people were like, well, I don't really follow politics. A lot of people follow baseball. A lot of people are aware of America's pastime. So even people who are, inherently racist still acknowledge and appreciate and have some type of feelings towards Hank Aaron.
Yes.
I will say, going back to what you were just talking about, I was listening to Larry Wilmore, and he was talking about Hank Aaron's legacy and how a lot of people till this day are like, you think that people didn't want him to break Babe Ruth's record because he was Black, but it wasn't about being Black. It wasn't about being Black. Hank Aaron, till the day he died, kept the death threat letters that he got during that time. And all the ways that he was called an N-word in all the different variations and told him, you better not. Up until the day he did it. And then letters that talked about, we know where you're going to be next.
Of course you do. The team schedule's out, bitch.
And because he wasn't like the braggadocious type of athlete that we see these days. He just kind of, flew under the radar, but still kept doing him. And that's what made him even greater, because it was like, I'm winning. I'm low key, not in your face, but still gonna do it winning. And he maintained that for his entire career and his post-career life. And anytime you saw him on TV, that's what you saw.
You saw a very humble athlete, man. This dude, I hear a lot of older cats talk about, football and baseball, but it's not what it used to be. These guys are out here fucking dancing and doing their choreographed bullshit. I miss the old guys. And they would mention players like Hank Aaron, who would just do it, hit their home runs, touch 4 bases, go back, high five the team, sit down, get ready to do it again. Hank Aaron was respected by multiple races, multiple species or whatever on different levels for different reasons. So that is definitely a legend that we just recently lost. J. Roman, you're doing some Hank Aaron research. You okay, man? You good?
I was trying to get more than just Hank Aaron in the research a little bit, but no, it was more about and I remember right when he died, this stat came out. Hank Aaron is one of, I think it's 4 people with 600 home runs plus, of course, and 3,000 hits over those. One of 4. Let's take that in perspective. Out of the almost 200 years of freaking baseball at this point, and 3 of those people actually happen to be brown skin or darker. 2 are Dominican. One is black. I forget who the other one is. I'd have to take a look at that. And another interesting thing came out right when it happened is when you add his Negro League stats, his numbers are better than Babe Ruth earlier than when he hit the last one, hit the home run to pass it. So it's one of the things we forget. Hank Aaron, the 20 years in the league that he had, plus I think he had more than that in the league before that. Okay, so he was already doing the damn thing. Also, he played with a more integrated league, so he had more competition to deal with. So all the arguments I heard about who's better than this, guess what? They're different eras anyway. You're never going to win that argument. Babe Ruth was way back then. It was black and white. You know what I mean? On TV, I mean. So whereas like now it's a lot
white and white in the real world.
But when it comes down to it, Hank Aaron was a legend, an icon, everything that a hero, everything you wanted someone to be, black or white. It's great that he was a black man who did overcome all this. You know, and you mentioned that the home run where he hit and he passed Babe Ruth's record, and there's people that were just running along the field with him. They weren't reporters or anything, apparently. They were just people. So he was getting death threats, like Veltria was saying, and like you were saying, up to the day and then after. So one great thing was kind of cool is another legend is the one who called that home run, the great Vin Scully. Vin Scully called that home run. So it was amazing when I thought about it, like when they replayed it, I was like, wow, legend at the time and to this day, still going. And the stuff that Hank Aaron did for the sport quietly, I think is what gained so much respect from him, because he didn't have to be super vocal. And it would have been great had he been maybe politically vocal, but he didn't have to be, because he did it through his bat, he did it through his play, he did it through his character, right? And that's all we needed. You know what I mean? So it's amazing what we were able to, I guess, learn about from, you know, when they integrated with Jackie Robinson to Willie Mays to Hank Aaron to Roberto Clemente, all these people, you know what I mean? Like, these are major influences in this game that still, yeah, they bring up Hank Aaron, but you got to talk to someone who's old to bring up Hank Aaron. Now all it is whoever's in there now, but no one even talks about him. But I remember growing up, people would talk about, oh, Hank Aaron was this, Hank Aaron was that. And it's like, I barely even knew much about baseball. I knew Babe Ruth, I knew Jackie Robinson, Willie Mays from Major League, and they talked about Hank Aaron. That's all I heard was like basically those four players. Yeah, of course, later on, Lou Gehrig and all that stuff, but it was those four because they were the four that mattered the most. And it's obvious why. You know, I mean, his career, you know, stands for itself, and it sucks that we lost another one. And it's, you know, it's not like he was young and stuff like that. You know, he was already old. I don't know what he passed away. I think they said he passed away quietly in his sleep, which is nice. You know, he got to pass that way, which is great. So, but you know, we're celebrating the legend versus mourning the loss. But it does suck that we lost him. You know, it's another one. You know, and would it have happened COVID year or not? Who knows? It doesn't really matter at this point. He's still gone. And not only to do that, but on that note as well, it's over a year since Kobe died. So I'm going to throw that one in there real quick. It's been over a year since Kobe died. Another huge force in sports. You know what I mean? And we're not going to get too much into that. Everyone knows those stats. They're pretty recent. But yeah, Hank Aaron, RIP, man. Rest in power. Bat that ball all the way to space. You know, at this point, heaven, wherever the hell that's at. You know what I mean?
We are going to get up out of your ear and out of your face. We want to thank Veltria for gracing our show. The 50th episode. Here is to another 50. If I had set this up properly, I would have had a shot ready on deck for me and Vel to take one. You could drink chocolate milk, whatever, J. Roman. Yes. We would have taken a shot, but we'll do it when we can actually be in a room together. I just want to say real quick, the first time the three of us were all in a room together was at a BSU Black Student Union meeting. You know that. First time the three of us were in an actual room together. Want to share that with you.
And I was Sergeant at Arms.
Yeah, right. Until next time, I'm Shaun Q. Be smart.
J. Roman, we out.
Keep it old school.